The sweet old grandma, who everyone loved, suddenly became the talk of the town after she was caught red-handed doing something very inappropriate with her nephew. What could this secret be? What did they do together? And what made people so shocked? You'll find out in today's video. It was an ordinary day in the little town of Willow Creek. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and life seemed pretty good for the residents. Among them was an adorable couple, Grandma Martha and Grandpa George. They had been married for over 50 years and were considered role models for strong and everlasting love. Their 3 children often told them they were relationship goals, and even the grandchildren adored their grandparents. But one day everything changed when a family secret that had been buried for years came to light. It all started with strange looks. People began noticing strange glances between Martha and her nephew, Robert. They would meet at the local cafe often and engage in deep conversations while everyone else left. This in itself wasn't strange because the two were very close. Martha had raised Robert when he was just a baby after his parents died in a car accident. She had always treated him like her own son, and their bond was unbreakable. However, things got weirder when people started seeing them holding hands and hugging each other goodbye when they parted ways. It was still odd, but people chose to ignore it, assuming there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. But they were wrong. The day the townspeople found out the truth, they couldn't believe their eyes. Martha and Robert were returning from a grocery store where they had gone together. They were loading the groceries into the car when Mrs. Peterson, the busybody from next door, arrived. She was shocked to see Martha and Robert unloading the car together, but before she could say anything, Robert slammed the trunk and went around to the other side to sit in the front passenger seat. Martha looked flustered for a moment, but quickly recovered and got into the car as well. Mrs. Peterson couldn't help but notice that the way they were sitting was a bit too close for comfort. Then she noticed something unbelievable. Martha's hand was on Robert's lap. At first, she must have imagined it. But when she saw Martha's hand move from his lap to his chest and then to his shoulder, she knew she wasn't mistaken. With trembling hands, Mrs. Peterson dialed 911 and reported what she had just seen to the police. When the police arrived, they didn't find any evidence of any crime being committed, so they left without making any arrests. However, Mrs. Peterson wasn't satisfied with this. She wanted more answers, so she went to Martha's house and demanded to know what was going on between her and Robert. Martha was stunned by the accusation and tried to defend herself, but Mrs. Peterson wouldn't listen. She continued to harass Martha until she finally admitted that she was having a relationship with her nephew. Mrs. Peterson couldn't believe her ears. She had always liked Martha and couldn't understand why she would do such a thing. Before Martha could explain, Mrs. Peterson ran to the local gossip center, the library, and spilled the beans to anyone who would listen. Soon, everyone in town knew about Martha and Robert's relationship. People were shocked and appalled. They couldn't believe that Martha, a respected member of the community, would cheat on her husband with her own nephew. Rumors spread like wildfire, and soon Martha and Robert were being shunned by the entire town. Martha was devastated. She had never meant for things to get this out of hand. She had always thought that her relationship with Robert was private and that nobody would ever find out. But now her secret was out, and everyone was judging her. She tried to apologize to the townspeople, but they wouldn't listen. They continued to hurl insults and throw tomatoes at her, calling her a witch and a monster. Martha felt like she couldn't take it anymore. She was tired of being judged, and she was tired of the rumors. She decided to leave Willow Creek and start a new life somewhere else. She packed her bags and said goodbye to her home, not knowing if she would ever return. Meanwhile, Robert was struggling with his own guilt. He had never meant for things to go this far. He had only been trying to comfort his aunt after she had lost her husband. But he had never imagined that she would develop feelings for him. He tried to stay away from Martha, but she was always there waiting for him, needing his support. He couldn't bring himself to tell her no, and soon they were in too deep. Now, seeing the destruction that their relationship had caused, Robert wished he had never met Martha. As time passed, the people of Willow Creek began to forget about Martha and Robert. They moved on with their lives, and eventually the scandal was nothing but a distant memory. However, one day, a young girl named Emma moved to town with her grandmother, Martha. Emma and her grandmother kept to themselves and didn't associate with anyone in town. Emma understood that her grandmother was a social pariah, and she didn't want to make things worse for her. Emma started attending the local school and made some good friends. She often told them stories about her grandmother, who was very talented at baking and gardening. The kids were always curious about Martha, but they never went to her house because they were afraid of what the other kids would think. One day, Emma invited her friends over to her house. She was excited to show them her grandmother's amazing garden, but she was nervous about how they would react. However, to her surprise, they were all very nice to Martha and praised her for her beautiful garden. Martha was touched by their kindness and invited them all in for some cookies. The kids were hesitant at first, but they eventually agreed. When they entered the house, they saw a framed picture of Martha and a man on the wall. They asked Emma who the man was, and she told them it was her grandpa. "I don't remember him," Martha said sadly. "He passed away a few years ago." The kids were silent for a moment. They didn't know what to say. They had heard the rumors about Martha, but they couldn't understand why anyone would be mean to such a kind woman. "I'm sorry about your grandpa," one of the kids finally said. "He looks nice." Martha smiled sadly. "Thank you. He was the best." The kids spent the afternoon playing games and eating cookies with Martha. They had never felt so comfortable around an adult before, and Martha felt like she was finally accepted by the younger generation. When it was time for the kids to go, they all hugged Martha goodbye. "I had so much fun today," one of them said. "Can I come back again?" "Of course," Martha replied with a smile. "Anytime." As the kids walked away, Martha felt a sense of hope. Maybe she could finally move on and start a new chapter in her life. Maybe she could find happiness again. The following weekend, Emma and her friends returned to Martha's house. This time, they brought her some flowers from their gardens. "These are for you, Mrs. Martha," Emma said. "They're beautiful," Martha replied, her eyes twinkling. "Thank you for bringing these to me." The kids spent another wonderful afternoon with Martha, and she felt like she had finally found a place where she belonged. The townspeople of Willow Creek may have judged and ostracized her, but the younger generation was more accepting and understanding. And so, Martha's life took a turn for the better. She no longer felt like a social outcast, and she was grateful for the friendship of Emma and her friends. As the years passed, Martha's relationship with her granddaughter's friends continued to grow. They often visited her for tea and cookies, and she enjoyed listening to their stories and giving them advice. One day, one of Emma's friends, Emily, approached Martha with a worried expression. "Mrs. Martha," she said, "I have a problem and I don't know what to do." Martha smiled reassuringly. "Tell me what's wrong, dear, and maybe I can help." Emily hesitated for a moment, but then she confided in Martha. She told her about a boy she liked, how she had asked him to the school dance, and how he had rejected her. "I don't understand," Emily said, tears welling up in her eyes. "Why doesn't he like me?" Martha listened patiently, and when Emily was finished, she put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Emily," she said softly, "being rejected is part of life. Not everyone is going to like us, and that's okay. You can't force someone to love you." Emily sniffed and nodded. "I know you're right, Mrs. Martha. I just wish I had someone to go to the dance with." Martha smiled. "Well, you have me. You can go with me." Emily's face lit up. "Really? Would you, Mrs. Martha?" "Of course," Martha replied. "I'd love to go with you. It'll be our little secret." And so, at the school dance, Emily and Martha were the center of attention. Everyone stared at them in disbelief as they danced together, but they didn't care. They were having fun. After the dance, Emily hugged Martha tightly. Thank you for going with me, Mrs. Martha. It was the best night of my life. Martha smiled. You're welcome, dear. I'm glad you had fun. As the years passed, Martha's relationship with the younger generation of Willow Creek continued to grow. She was no longer the town's recluse, and she was finally living a happy and fulfilling life.